welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and nice to have in the studio with us today our good buddy, Patrick Doyle. He heads up Veritas Counseling, and every time he's here, I learn a lot, you learn a lot, and together we are ministered to. And Patrick, nice to see you.
Thank you.
And you want to deal with something today. This is a big topic. I don't know if we can cover this in an hour. By the way, let me say to our listeners, you're more than welcome to join us in the conversation. And if you want to remain anonymous, we can respect that request as well. Just give us a call, excuse me, at 776-5368. So you want to deal with the subject of hurt.
Hurt, yes.
What is hurt?
Well, that's in the eyes of the person who's been hurt. And I think a lot of times what happens in relationships, I don't know, one of the most common experiences of humanity since the beginning of time, I believe, is hurt. I don't believe there's ever been a person that's lived that's not experienced hurt. So I think how we deal with it has a lot to do with how our circumstances go, how our lives end up. So people aren't going to get away from hurt because we live in a fallen world. Even the people that love me the most still hurt me because they're selfish, or they have a bad day, or they don't have any patience at some point, and all of us go through that. So the idea that somehow we're going to have relationships that don't ever have this, to me, is denial. And so what I want to do is talk about what happens when we're hurt internally, how does it affect us, and then what does that do to our relationships? What does it do to our relationships if hurt is dealt with? What does it do to our relationships if hurt is not dealt with? Because, you know, the truth is you're going to have to deal with it. Now, you can deal with it by avoidance, which I would say is always going to lead you to a bad place. In 100% of the time, avoidance of what's harmed you will lead you to a bad place. My saying is this: if you don't deal with it, it'll deal with you.
You know, what's interesting about hurt is I don't know how much of it are you talking about would be intentional versus totally ignorant?
Well, and I think there's a slight difference to the person who's been hurt, but ultimately, if you don't deal with it, it ends up in the same bucket. It all sort of, you know, and think about it. So you're in a relationship. So let's just take a marriage relationship, and your wife or your husband regularly does something that hurts you. What does it cause you to feel? Does it increase your trust?
No.
Does it increase your intimacy?
No.
Does it increase your desire to be in the relationship? No. If someone's hurting you and you're not dealing with it, and it's going to create in you what the Bible calls bitterness, or in counseling terms, resentment. Okay? And we've said it before. Remember, resentment is when you take the poison and wait for the other guy to die.
Right.
It's a really bad strategy for dealing with hurt. So if you, and remember, so hurt's gonna happen in a relationship. It's unavoidable. So if you don't have a way to deal with hurt, you're going to end up resentful. So I talk about it all the time. It's the couple that you see in the breakfast restaurant that have been married a long time, they've been together a long time, and they're sitting there having breakfast, but you can tell they don't want to be there. They don't like each other, they don't talk to each other, they don't have anything to say. I'm thinking, couldn't you at least reminisce? I mean, you've been together for 50 years, couldn't you at least talk about yesterday or something? But there's so much intensity that they don't talk. They don't even look at each other. There's a lot of tension. And what I would say to you is those people did not start that way. No one starts at the altar saying, here's to being miserable and hating you later. You know, people start at the altar with, yay, this is going to be great. And what happens is, in a relationship, when you don't deal with the inevitable hurt, you end up in that place of separation, bitterness, anger, intolerance.
You know, you get them in your office, I've had them in mine, and by the time we get a person, an individual, or maybe sometimes a couple, but usually an individual first that's been hurt, it's a buildup. And by the time you get them, they're, the damage has been done. Now, I do want to talk about trying to avoid that, but what I've noticed is, you know, we talked about stereotypes earlier today. The stereotype is the woman runs the man. That's kind of the stereotype.
Right.
And when I have had these men in my office through the years, what I have discovered is they just kind of turn off and shut down because they don't know how to say, what you're saying is bothering me. What you're, They don't know how to approach the emotional part of a woman
exactly.
to stop the hurt.
Right.
And therefore, she continues to do it not knowing that it's an offense.
Right.
And so that the wall's built.
Right. And then he ends up with a great golf game, or, you know, a good business, or a great fishing spot.
Yeah.
He finds a way to avoid, right?
Right.
Well, what happens when you avoid things? Take our country, for example. When you avoid the problems of debt, what happens?
Well, where we are today.
They get worse, right? So things don't get better. It's what I always tell people is this. I'm no scientist, but I have read a few books. And, you know, the second law of thermodynamics, okay? From the process of heating and thawing, everything goes from order to disorder. It decays, okay? Most provable physical science law. Okay. And also, I would say for those people who believe in evolution, that's a problem. But you take that physical science law and you apply it to relationships. Things do not get better on their own without an absolute effort, a push toward changing it. It's going to naturally decay. Every relationship. So, what can you do if someone's hurt you?
Well, the first thing that happens is that if somebody goes to a friend or a spouse and says, you know, the way you're saying that really hurts me.
Yes.
The first response is, well, I'm not saying it that way.
Right.
Well, checkmate. Now what do you do, Coach? That's when I call you and say, Tag, you're it. You can have them.
Well, right, because a lot of times people live in a very defensive mode. They don't want to take responsibility for their hurt, which is why I tell people, you know, listen, the first thing you do before you approach someone is you make sure that you're not doing it in an angry response. So if you're hurting me, and let's just say we're in a relationship, you're hurting me, and one day I just finally have enough of it, and I'm like, that's it, and I just lash back. Now, is that going to make you want to not hurt me?
Well, it's going to make all my defenses go up.
And what it's going to do is justify you and make me look bad. See, look at you. You're out of control. Look how angry you are. I'm not like that. I see this in marriages all the time. The passive one seems like the one who's the good one, you know, because they don't ever lose their temper. And the other one's taking the hurt, taking the hurt, taking the hurt, taking the hurt. And then at one day they blow up, and then, you know, they're the bad guy. But both parties are guilty. Okay? So in a position where you've been wounded, the scriptures say that the antidote to hurt is forgiveness. Now, I don't like that answer. Because I think I want to be really specific about this, because what I believe forgiveness biblically is I don't believe what forgiveness is. I don't think it means that you're saying what that person did to you is okay. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. That's not forgiveness. That's denial. It's not sweeping it under the rug, as it were, and acting like it didn't happen. Okay? Forgiveness is not about you letting that person continue to harm you. I think a lot of people think that. If I forgive them, then they have the right to continue to do what they're doing. No, forgiveness is really about you and God dealing with the issue of justice. Because when you're hurt, don't you want justice? When somebody hurts me, that's the first thing I want. I want justice. Stop doing that. That's wrong. And that's what hurt is when someone does an injustice to you. So let's talk about that for a second, because I think I see this a lot in my office. So when someone's angry, I see that as the surface level problem. Anger's never the real deal. It's what in counseling we call secondary emotion. Okay? Anger. And below anger is hurt. Right? And below hurt is injustice. So if you're angry, but you never deal with the hurt, and you never see what the injustice was in your eyes, then you can never deal with the reality of it. So what I see people do is they're angry, and they battle back and forth in their anger. And they never go down below to the point where they say, you know, when you said so-and-so, that really hurt my feelings, or that was really painful for me. And that's the injustice. I felt like you betrayed me. I felt like you threw me under the bus. Okay? So if we never get to that, then we never have resolve. So forgiveness is about the process of justice. Now here's the deal. In a relationship, can I bring about justice for the other person's harm?
No.
No. But I want to. I'm fully prepared to try.
Yeah. By the way, God, you need help. I'll take care of it for you.
God, you can take a break. I got this one. I'm taking off their whole face on this one. So, you know, the other thing is I think people get alarmed a lot of times that they have feelings of retribution. Somebody harms you, you want to get them back. Now, God says, look, vengeance is mine. I'm God. I'm the one in charge of vengeance. Right. That's not within your, that's above your pay grade. So, okay, God, I believe that. I understand that, but I still want it. I still want justice. So, I believe part of the process of forgiveness is me trusting God for the justice.
Okay.
Okay, now, that brings up a whole bunch of issues because God doesn't do it my way. And Jonah, I believe, is a great example of someone who wanted justice his way and was irritated that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Jonah, when God saved all of Nineveh, was angry because he saw it as an injustice. He's like, God, those people are our enemies. You should kill them. You've done that before. Come on, let's get back on that plan. And God saved the whole city. And they were Israel's enemy. And Jonah was mad. And I find myself just like Jonah a lot of times. God has mercy on someone, and I'm angry because I wanted justice.
All right, I want to come back to. We're going to take a break in a few moments.
Okay.
I want to deal with the. If this person is hurting you,
Yep.
and you address it in a civil way, say, "Hey, look, you need to know the way you're saying this affects me this way."
Right.
At that point, isn't the ownership of this offense on them if they continue to do it?
Well, the ownership of the offense is always on them. Well, what we want to find is there any ability to own a conviction and a repentance? Because without that, the relationship is doomed to shallowness anyway.
But if the person keeps on doing it, now you're the counselor person here. What's the motive of them behind it if they continue to do it?
Well, there's lots of reasons for that, but one thing you can definitely know is that at the point that you say something to them and they don't respond in a way of changing and they continue to hurt you, what you know is at that point is they're absolutely unsafe. You can't trust them because they don't care. Now, they're not going to say that, but their behavior is very clear. I don't care. If I say to you, Perry, when you did that, it hurt me, and you're like, okay, yeah, and then you keep doing it, what's that leave me to believe?
Yeah. Okay. Can the hurt be self-induced?
Yes. Yes. People oftentimes carry a lot of hurt about their own behavior.
Yeah.
Things they've done. I certainly have in my own life because, you know, I've done a lot of horrible things. So, yeah, Ben, that's something we should talk about because there's a process of forgiveness there with the individual that is very important because God's not holding it against us. We like to, though.
Is that a background why they would continue to hurt somebody else?
Right. So here's the saying we have: hurt people hurt people.
Oh.
I've never been in a situation where someone was being hurtful. When we dug down in it, we didn't find they were in a lot of pain themselves.
Okay. We're talking about the subject of hurt, and this is really an interesting one because it's so multifaceted.
Yep, gets into everything.
Let's keep it real simple just for a moment. If somebody's feeling pain from somebody else, if they're receiving hurt from somebody else, and before it reaches a boiling point, what should they do?
Well, first of all, what you have to do is you have to say something. And here's some of my recommendations. Look, if you're in a situation where you're being hurt and there's a lot of pain, don't have a conversation because you'll never make it through. As soon as you start talking about the offense, they'll maybe overtalk you or take it down another road or start rationalizing or justifying, and you'll never get through it. And then you'll get triggered and you'll get angry because they're not listening. So I would really say this. There's really a very helpful part of the process is for you to sit down and take some time and write out what it is that's bothering you. And be specific. And be specific behaviorally. Okay? when you raised your voice and called me a name, blah, 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 that was very hurtful to me. And I need to let you know that that was hurtful, and I don't want it to happen anymore. Okay? So when you sit down to write, one of the things that will happen is you'll get clear about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be able to sift through some of the stuff that's, you know, ancillary and what's really going on. And sometimes I tell people to take 1 or 2 passes at it, because sometimes you take one, you're angry, and when you're angry, I say, when you're angry is a good time to do it. Just write it down and no editing. Just let it fly. And if it's, you know, pages are tearing, and, you know, that's fine. Because you need to get it out so that when you have the conversation, you're not like, you know, sitting there vibrating because you're so upset or so fearful or whatever. So you get through some of that. And then you sit down with the person and say, you know, I'd like to talk to you about something, but it's really hard for me. It's emotional for me. It's difficult for me. So I want to read what I have to say, and please don't interrupt me till I'm done, and then when I'm done, you can respond.
Okay, so the first process is write your hurt down.
Yes.
Clarify it in your own brain.
Yes.
And then meet with the person who's doing the hurt.
Right.
Preferably, you know, alone, obviously,
Yes.
in some kind of an environment where you can
And if you have kids or whatever, make sure they're not around.
Yeah. Don't get interrupted. Sit
Yeah,
down,
exactly.
because this thing turns into a lengthy conversation.
Exactly. That's what we hope.
Is hurt control-based? I mean, the person who's hurting, the perpetrator, if I can put it that way,
Yeah.
are they ultimately seeking control?
Sometimes. Sometimes it's a defense.
Okay, so...
Sometimes people, you know, sometimes the best defense is a good offense.
So if they throw pain out there, that's...
Protects them.
I call it management by grenade.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, we call it self-protecting relating styles.
I'm not the counselor. I'm just a lay guy. So, you know, I see people throw grenades out there, they explode, and all the attention goes over there, and it's off this.
Exactly.
And once it's attention in, they throw one over there, then it's off that.
Yeah.
So it's a grenade throwing management, you know.
Rather than being present. So here's the thing. One of my ultimate goals is to help people, and particularly within the church. I mean, Jesus said that they, meaning the world, will know who I am by your political causes and your bumper stickers and your music and your worship styles. And
pretty much.
No, Jesus said they will know who I am by your love
for one another.
One for another. So Jesus was saying the evangelical tool is the church loving each other. Tangibly.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're in all these relationships that are all messed up because they're hurt and we're unrepentant and we're not being loving or kind or generous or forgiving, what is the world going to see?
Yeah, well, they see bigoted, angry people.
Yeah, so if we really want to affect the world around us, then deal with the relationships with your brothers, with your sisters. Now, there are people that are your brothers and sisters who may not be willing. And that's one of the things that as we go through this process, we find out. We find out who's safe, we find out who's not. And this is what I see in the church a lot of times, is that there's not an option for somebody to not be safe. Because we're Christians, we have to have a relationship with everybody. No, we don't. You have a relationship with people who are willing. And Jesus said, if you go to a town, they won't listen to you, shake the dust off your feet and go to another one. Don't waste your time. Okay, so I have to start to discern that. And so when I live a life of being able to confront people about their behavior towards me, what it does is it helps me decide where the safe people are and where the safe people aren't. So my life starts to build into something that's really redemptive.
Well, I've learned that. I mean, you know, in business and ministry and everything else, you go where you just, for the sake of, blessed are the peacemakers.
Yeah.
And I think making peace means avoid some people who are not peaceful in your life.
That's exactly it. Well, the scripture says, be at peace with all men as much as it depends on you. Now listen, did you realize that it's just not possible to be at peace with some people?
Yeah, so move on.
Exactly, but I see a lot of times people putting a lot of energy into something that, you know, a year ago was very clear that energy wasn't going to work out for them.
Yeah.
So I always say, don't pour good energy down a bad hole. I mean, once you determine that that person is unwilling, now a lot of people are like, oh no, you can't let people just determine that. Well, you can't have a choice, they do anyway.
Okay.
So listen, under the conviction of the Holy Spirit, not your self-righteous agenda. There's a difference. I want to do what God wants me to do. And if it's have this difficult relationship, then I will, under His conviction. But if it's just me doing it, I don't have the power to get through it, Perry. I want to give up and run away. I want my comfort.
Yeah.
Give me my blankie.
Love never puffs itself up. No, love never, and I'm paraphrasing, doesn't demand its own way.
Right.
Love doesn't keep record. Love never fails. But in a marriage relationship, when these things aren't dealt with soon, they harbor, they boil, they harbor, they boil. And what I find out is that by the time you get them, and I've had them in my office, is that I question if they really do love each other. What they're trying to do is figure out a way to have a soft landing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hear love. I hear my way, my hurt, my pain, and it's real. It's real. They have been offended. That is real. I'm not saying you're wrong for feeling that way.
Right.
And same thing with the other person. But I thought, well, what happened to love in this relationship? Where did it go?
Well, it got buried by hurt. So if you hurt me and you don't deal with it, then what I do is I put up a little bit of a wall to you. So the same wall that I put up to protect myself also entombs me.
Oh.
It's an unintended consequence. When I was building it, I was getting the relief of the protection. I didn't realize I was closing myself in. Okay. So, for us to have healthy relationships, we have to deal with conflict. So I've said this before, you can't have intimacy without conflict. And the idea that you can have this great relationship that never has a problem, I think that's denial. I mean, if you don't have any conflict in your relationship, it's because you're not dealing with anything. And unless you're both Jesus, there's something to deal with.
Well, okay. Let me take a phone call here. I don't know who we have, but maybe we can get it here. Hi, you're on the air with Patrick Doyle. Go ahead.
Hi, Perry.
Hi.
This is Nancy, and I have just a short question. My oldest son, who is 62 now, had a stroke several years ago. We'd always had not always, but most of the time, a pretty good relationship. He obviously loved me. If I needed anything, I didn't have to ask for it. He bought it for me, a new microwave, a new TV, stuff like that.
Right.
After he had this stroke, before he had it, when I would go to see him, he would hardly talk to me. He just didn't want to have much to do with me. And so I got to where I would say hello when I went in, and that would be it. Anyway, he had this stroke, and then he had all those things they put in the veins to relieve what's causing the problem. I went to see him in the hospital, even though he and I hadn't been having a very friendly relationship. And I walked into his room, and he let loose on me before he hardly said anything else, and told me I never raised them, my mother raised them, and just brought up things that had never even been gone into before. And I want to know, can a stroke change a person's personality?
Well, you're asking a medical question.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
I said you're asking a medical question, but I don't know. You want to respond?
Well, I think certainly when the brain is damaged, it certainly has an effect on someone, and a stroke does damage a brain. But I'm certainly no expert on that. One of the things I would suggest to you, though, is that if you go back through what he said, just with God's help, ask God if there's any legitimacy to it. Because the truth is, he could have been like rationalizing or denying or minimizing those things, and now maybe they're blown out of proportion. But if you want to maintain the relationship, and he's in a state of some sort of damage in his brain, I would just go to him. I would go to him after looking at those things and saying, I heard what you said, and I think on these things you have a point. Or if there's nothing to it, then I would just chalk it up to something that was going on in his brain, and I'd just treat him with love and respect and see where it goes.
Okay, and don't try and bring up the former relationship. In other words,
don't keep trying to go back to the way it used to be.
Okay.
You just take it for what it is.
Okay.
And if you see that he has like the cognition or the mental framework of who he was, then maybe. But since I don't really know his state neurologically, I don't know. But you be kind and you be present, and you look at the things he says and see if there's anything to it.
Then you think I should try and keep up my end of the relationship?
Absolutely.
Well, you need to do it for yourself, and remember this: love never fails.
And I think what Perry's saying is that God will give you the love you need to get through this. Don't put it on.
I still have the love. I am not holding any grudges or anything,
Good.
but I
Excellent.
haven't laid eyes on him since that day, and I'm just, I don't know if I'm doing the wrong thing by staying away.
Yeah,
or,
I would say so. I would say go see him, and if if he's angry or whatever, just try to talk it through with him. But do you want to never see him again?
Oh no, I want him to be part of my family again.
Okay, then you're going to have to take the risk and go in there.
Okay. Well, I thank you very, very
You're welcome.
much.
Okay, thank you. I want to come back to the one who is hurt that keeps on hurting. They themselves are hurt.
Yeah.
And so their whole demeanor is painful.
Right.
And they don't see that. To them, it's just everyday life.
Yeah, well, the thing I see a lot of is people who are, particularly, let's just say, people who are traumatized as children in some fashion, whatever way that is, generally, if they don't deal with the trauma that they were dealt as a child, then what will happen is that manifests itself in some way with them relationally. And so then the people that they're in relationship with, if they don't understand that there's a trauma underneath, this person's behaving in a way where they overreact to things. It's a level 10 reaction to a level 1 event. There's all kinds of just kind of odd responses. Yeah. And when you start to understand the trauma that's below it, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And you can move at that point from blame to compassion. Okay, when I start to understand why, it helps me go, okay, well, I can be with you on that. But if I don't understand and you just keep doing it and you seem like you don't care, that's going to end in a really bad place. So that's the other reason why we got to talk about this stuff and why we got to say this is what's bothering me, because the hope is we get down to the root cause of why you're treating me with injustice. Why are you harming me? Well, because I'm afraid, or well, because I'm trying to protect myself, or once you get down there, then we can work that out. And then we can move forward. And instead of the conflict becoming something that pulls us down, it actually creates better intimacy between us. Because when I go to somebody and I say, hey, you're really hurting me. And they go, really? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, what? And I'm telling them, and they're like, wow, I don't want to do that. That's my sin. I repent. I'm not going to do that to you anymore. And what happens when that person says that? Do I go, oh, I don't like them?
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I love that person. I trust them.
They owned up to their thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the phone. Hi, Lindy. You're on the air with Patrick Doyle.
Good morning to both of you.
Hi.
Hi. I too have an adult son who had a stroke, and I am experiencing the same thing that Nancy is experiencing. I love the Lord very much, and I'll tell you, without him, I wouldn't make it through. Satan is really powerful right now, and for those of us who are Christian know. And just trying to deal with this, if I didn't have the Lord, it would be awful. But just for words of encouragement for Nancy and Patrick, you just took the words right out of my mouth. She needs not to give up. She should pray about it, and we can't change anybody else. The only person we can change and control is ourselves.
Right.
And the other thing, we all have baggage left over from childhood.
Yeah.
We see so many generations where it's the same thing, and the children vow that I'm not going to hold on to this, when in fact we still do. And the only way that I believe that people can get over it is with the Lord.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
Well
So
said.
for words of encouragement to Nancy,
Yeah.
Nancy, I too have experienced and am experiencing this. Just keep your eye on the Lord. You just pay attention to what you can do with yourself. Love your son. Don't get into argument. They
Yeah.
definitely, after a stroke, have
Right.
a neurological change, which causes the personality
Yep.
to
Yeah.
change also. So everything comes down to one thing, and that's love.
There you go.
And that is God, and that is His Son Jesus.
Amen.
And so that's all it is.
Thank you,
That's all.
Lindy. Well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick and Perry. And Perry, I've been praying for the dove.
Thank
But
you.
once again, I'll always say it.
Thank
we
you.
love the dove.
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Patrick,
You're
for
welcome.
being there and all of your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day,
You
guys.
too. You know, she's bringing up an interesting point. Now, you would know this as a counselor. When there has been a stroke or an injury, or even an emotional damage to a
Right.
person, let's see if I can get this to come out right. It's hard for us who are rational and
Yeah.
clear in our cognitive thought
Yeah.
to understand someone who is not rational
Yeah.
and clear in their cognitive thought
Right.
and can't respond logically. So
Right.
you have logic trying to make sense of illogic,
Right.
and the frustration compounds itself.
Right, because if you keep trying to turn it into logical reality, you're never going to get
You're
there.
never going to get there.
So that's why I think it's important. I think one of the comments I would make about what Lindy said is I really want to make people aware that, listen, the love that God is talking about, He's the source of it. You're not going to pull that up out of your soul to love someone. What you do is you love that person in response to how much God has loved you. And I see a lot of people get in trouble because they start trying to be loving and it's not responsive. And when it's responsive, you have the ability. But when it's you trying to make it happen, the other person figures that out and is like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So-
All right, let's go to the phone. Hi, Norma. Thanks for waiting. What's your question today?
Yeah, good morning, guys.
Hi.
God bless you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have been listening this morning. This really touches home in our own family. We have a situation that's been going on for 7 years through a divorce, and if God wasn't in my life, I couldn't even handle this. My question, I guess, is how, when you've showed the love of the Lord over and over and over, and I will continue to do so, and the person keeps hurting, and hurting especially children around, how do you really continue to deal with that? I know the Lord is right there, but sometimes I don't understand why He continues to allow the hurt
Yeah.
to continue on.
Right. So if this person were unrepentant, would you change how you dealt with them?
I'm not understanding that.
If they don't repent of the harm they're causing, would you change the kind of relationship you have with them?
No.
And that's the problem. I think you need to.
But when there's children involved, how do you do that?
I realize that's a good point. So listen, if someone's unrepentant and they continue to harm and they don't really seem to care,
Yeah.
you cannot have an intimate relationship with them. You can have a relationship, but it has to be very surface level. Because if you give them any opportunity, they've proven over time that they don't care and they will take you out.
Yeah.
Right? So what I always tell people is that, look, when you're dealing with a lion, somebody who doesn't care, somebody who'll hurt you, what you have to do, you know, and you're in a family situation, you can't kill them.
Yeah.
You know, you can't run away. You have to cage them because they're not going to stop.
No, it's not, and that's
So,
I just really try to love them as I love the Lord, and I really strive.
Okay,
to,
but hold on a second, because I think part of loving them is putting some distance between you and them and keeping yourself safe.
I see.
I
Yeah.
think that's very loving of them, because if you let them continue to harm you, how is that loving to them?
Yeah, it's not.
Right. So nor is it loving to you or the people who are depending on you.
Yes.
So what you have to do is put some boundaries up against that person's harm. So you have a very shallow relationship. Hi, nice to see you. How's the weather? You know, but there's no conversation. I avoid that person on intimate issues. I see them in a minimal way, just enough to maintain whatever sort of surface level relationship I have to for the children or for the family's sake. If I can avoid inviting them to things, I do. If I can avoid seeing them, I do.
Yeah.
Because and now, if they were to repent, God were to convict them, and it was God's conviction of them, not them being caught or feeling sorry for themselves, but God's conviction of them, and you saw, and I guarantee you, if you saw conviction in this person, you'd see it in their eyes. You'd know it.
Yes,
Right?
I agree.
Okay,
Yes.
so if you saw that, then the rules change.
Yeah.
But until that conviction happens, you have to maintain a set of boundaries to protect yourself and others from their harm.
Good stuff. Thanks, Norma.
Yes. Thank you guys very much.
bet.
God bless you.
You bet.
too.
And I'm
You know-
sorry for your pain.
No, you bring up something. I was watching a video that we've played on the Dove TV several times. It was when the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir went to Angola prison.
Wow.
Now, let me fast forward and say that you can take the hardest of criminals, and when they've had an encounter with Christ,
Yes, sir.
now, yeah, they're
Yeah.
incarcerated and all
Yeah.
that, but you've seen the worst of the worst,
Yep.
supposedly the unredeemable,
Right.
have an encounter with Christ and melt. And I watched that thing 4 or 5 times. And I've been to the Brooklyn Tabernacle Church, and I have heard some of these testimonies
Yeah.
on the platform.
Right.
Plus, we've experienced them in our own lives.
Yeah.
There's a businessman in town here today that's just a walking miracle over the last 4 or 5 months.
Right.
So when God gets a hold of somebody,
Yep.
it is a radical turnaround.
No denying it.
So what I have learned is, and the advice I've given people is, all right, look, you are still trying to control the circumstances. You need to really start praying for this person's conversion.
Yes.
And start praying for those around this person.
Right.
Let me tell you that I have seen people come to Christ because we prayed for a person that was their best friend.
Right.
Their best friend got saved and led them to Christ.
Right. Exactly.
So you got to pray the Jesus impact more than you do trying to control the circumstances.
Right, exactly right. And I'm telling you, I've said this many times, and I'll keep saying it. I really believe it. Conviction is the source of change. It's not information.
Yeah, right.
When God
Yeah.
taps on a soul, things change.
Things
and you
change.
talk about Angola. I mean, I've been to Pelican Bay a few times.
Yeah.
I've seen some transformed souls.
Yeah.
You know, and
The
they're-
worst of the worst.
And they're not getting out.
They're not getting out.
They're in there for life.
Yeah.
And yet their life is totally different.
You got to remember this. You don't break God's laws break you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
The 10 Commandments are for humanity, not Christians.
Right.
And they're in motion for everybody
Yeah.
out there. So if you do something bad, you're going to pay the consequences. If you get saved in the process, you're just going to serve the consequences as a Christian.
Yeah,
That's all.
with freedom.
With freedom. Hi, Dolores. Thanks for waiting. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Well, bless your heart. I'm really enjoying the program.
Good.
Thank you.
Yes. I was given some money recently. My husband had died, so by my daughter-in-law, she gave me some money. But I had a feeling that the money wasn't given freely.
It had strings.
I can't hear you too well. I'm an old person.
It had strings.
Well, yeah, I kind of feel that way. And so I confronted her about it and said, you've made some remarks that doesn't feel quite right. So I said, I've been thinking about giving you the money back. And she had stated, well, that would be fine. This is 6 months after she'd given it to me.
Right.
And she said, well, I'd like to have the money back because she could use it for a trip back to the United States. And that if I want the money later, I could ask for it. But the thing is, on the check, it did say a gift.
Right.
And it just puts me, I could use the money, extra money, I should say. But
Right.
it just puts me, because I think there's a motive about...
You know, Dolores, for the sake of peace, I'd give it back.
Oh, wonderful.
I think for the sake of peace, I'd give it back and trust God for the rest.
Oh, bless your heart.
Well, and I think the other thing that's important to recognize, I really agree with Perry. Listen,
Can you speak louder, sir?
So I agree with Perry, and I would say this: don't ever put yourself in a position where someone has power over you when they don't care about you.
Yes.
Good stuff. All right. Let me ask you this before I go to Deborah. When do you tell somebody to, you can't find a resolve, you can't find a meeting place.
Right.
Just walk away.
Well, that's very much what I would say is something that's spiritually discerned. I would never say there's a formula for that. I think that there's so many nuances to every circumstance, to every situation, that you can't just say that. I do say that I do see that happens, though. I see some people are so resistant to any sort of change that the person is their harm is so great in staying that separating becomes the only way to survive.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the phone. Hi, Deborah. Thanks for waiting. You're on the air with Patrick Doyle.
Hello, Patrick and Perry.
Hi.
I don't want the show. I wanted to have a word of encouragement. I myself had massive head injuries in '84, and my brother, before that, had a stroke in his early 30s, drunk driving. And as God would have it, he later put me into home health care working with people with strokes. And I can tell you this, that people with strokes and even sometimes heart attacks, it is a symptom of the type of head injury that they often are very combative, and it isn't something that they can help.
Right.
With my brother, he would say things I knew that he didn't mean, and he would just absolutely crush you. And it wasn't until I had a head injury myself that I realized, and then I talked with a head injury support group, that these were things that he couldn't help, he didn't even realize he was doing.
And that
So
when you found
with God, we can get through the hurt if we deal with it, like you said. Don't let it build up. You have to deal with it.
Right.
But you have to love them. You have to realize they don't have control over it. And finally, there are head injury support groups, because most marriages of people with head injuries and stroke end in divorce.
So
but
Deborah,
if you know what to expect,
Deborah,
and you have the Lord, yes.
I think it's important what you're saying. One of the things I think that you're describing is, once you found out what the actual cause was, the hurt was diminished and the compassion was increased.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I think what you're saying is so important, is that once you get to the bottom of it, you're able to move from blame to compassion. If there's a legitimate, neurological reason, it will greatly increase your ability to handle the circumstances. And people who are in those circumstances are oftentimes very resistant to any sort of input, as you've well documented.
Okay, thank you,
Appreciate that
Deborah.
encouragement. I appreciate you calling in
Yeah.
and testifying to your reality. I thank you for that.
Well, again, okay, thank you, Deborah. 776-5368. We have a few moments left talking to Patrick Doyle about pain, about hurt. All right, now, it's obvious if we don't deal with it, it just builds and builds, and then there's the explosion. What happens sometimes when you get people, the hurt started, and then it's returned with hurt?
Yeah.
And
now we have escalating hurt.
Yeah. How do you blow the whistle and say, hey, go to your corners, we're going to have a recess here?
Okay, so again, I keep coming back to the same real answer there, is that, look, I can be in a referee situation. I can say, I think you're wrong and I think you're wrong. But in the relationship, if the person who's doing the offense doesn't get convicted that they are wrong and then repent, then it's going to be really hard for the other person to have any sort of trust that there's going to be change. And so I always tell people in these situations, the first thing you have to do is look to yourself. God, please convict me of where I'm wrong. And then what you do is you go to that other person with your sin, if they're safe enough, and then you start there. Very rarely will it work when you're lobbing over the fence.
Yeah.
To get them to come to their own senses. Now, the way you do that is you say, this, and this. You write it down and say, these things are harming me. I want you to know about that. Now, what that person does with that information will tell you if the relationship has a chance to move towards safety or if it's going to stay in a place of hurt. What they do tells the story. And I've said this 1,000 times or more, and I'll keep saying it. I make my decision based on what people do, not what they say. Oh, I'm sorry. And then they keep doing it. Well, they're not sorry. So at some point, we have to start living in the reality of what their behavior is saying. And I think a lot of times what we do is we minimize and we deny and we rationalize and we sort of put, to the side what their behavior is saying to us. And I think the sooner you get in touch with what that behavior is saying, the sooner you get to resolve. And what I say is this, is that if you start dealing with the behavior, it'll either speed up the healing or the destruction of your relationship. Either way, you'll get out of limbo.
Where does mental illness play into this?
All over the place. You mean anybody who's been profoundly hurt has some, what I would call pathological realities. So when I say pathological, let me just explain that for a second. So if you go to the doctor and he says you have diabetes, what we know is diabetes will follow basically the same path every time. If not dealt with, it goes in this direction. Right. It's predictable. So somebody who's been hurt, wounded, abused, neglected, abandoned, whatever, they have what I would call emotional pathology. It's predictable. How they respond to things. And it's different. There's different versions of it, depending on the nuances of what happened to them, depending on the person they're in a relationship with. But part of what you have to do is start to identify those things. And the person who's having those reactions, most of the time, isn't even aware they're doing it. Mm-hmm. Because it's so ingrained in them. It's so in their DNA. They're 2 miles down that road before they even realize what's happening. So that's the other part of, I think, why it's important to slow down, to write things down, and to look at them, because when they're in your head, you can't make any sense of them. When you get them out here in the light, now we can, not only that, when you write it down, you can show it to a trusted friend and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm sensing. You think that's legitimate? But when it's all just internal, no perspective, it builds on itself, it's all mangled and twisted up together, it's hard to make sense of it.
Why do Christians feel they have to take control? And what I mean by that, I realize that's that's a Texas-sized question. What's interesting to me is that we are saying and believing almost a different thing. I mean, we're saying one thing. Yeah. And we're confessing what we believe, but our actions are different.
I trust God, but I'm going to take care of it?
Yeah. I trust God, I'm going to take care of it. Then if we're not careful, we get angry at God, or we shut down on God.
Absolutely.
We just shut down. Yeah, he's over there, and I'm over here, and yeah, he loves me, and I'm a Christian, but it ain't working out, so I'm just going to shut down.
Yeah, but. Yeah. Yeah, well, and here's the thing. That's another way to protect myself. Because God's not the kind of person who allows avoidance. But I want it. I want to avoid it, or I want him just to do it and I don't have to be a part of it. And I see a lot of people say that, well, God's not doing anything. And he's like, meanwhile, there's all this evidence that points to the fact that he wants you to take a risk. And if you would take a risk, these things might start to move in a direction. But I want the giant genie in a bottle to come and, give me 3 wishes and everything. I want to go live on the, the tropical island. So, I mean, God is interested not in your comfort. He's interested in you seeing him. And I'm telling you what, from somebody who's walked with the Lord a long time, I don't usually see him on vacation.
You see him in crises.
I see him when I see the pain in my children's eyes, or my wife's eyes, or my friend's eyes, or somebody in my church, or when the difficulty hits my soul, that's when I start to see him. And listen, what's more important, your comfort or seeing God? Well, I would say it's seeing God, but you could ask me that question at times and I'd give you the other answer.
All right, so the person, I want to come back, we only got a couple minutes here. The person who is receiving this this hurt, and they can't seem to stop it or get it under control.
Right.
Should they pull back?
If the person...
Create a safe zone?
Yes, I would pull back to see if I could get some relief from the hurt so I could start to process what's happening. If you then pull back, you write something down, you confront the person, and they totally blow you off, then you have to start creating some safety, okay? And you're going to probably need to get somebody else involved, okay? So listen, if they repent, what do? Well, you're all closed up because they've been hurting you, and they repent. At that point, what I don't want somebody to do is go, oh, and go all the way in. So once somebody repents, what you do is you go, we'll see how you do.
Okay.
And they have to rebuild the trust. Okay, so it's not 0 to everything. It's 0 to 1% to 3% to 5%,
Right.
and you let them in based on their trustworthy behavior. Trust is earned, not granted. So in a relationship, they have to behave in a way that proves they're safe. And if they do, you'll have a great and deep intimacy. If they don't, you won't.
Okay, because boy, that's too confusing for me.
We'll come back to it next time.
No, what's interesting to me is if we're not careful, you create all these dynamics that as you're earning trust.
Yeah.
If you're not careful, it empowers this person that you're earning the trust with to end up being the dominant one at the end because you did it their way.
Well, you see, if that's the case, then that's really the result of two people not being in conviction.
Yeah.
It's one person controlling another, and that won't last.
Yeah.
It never does.
Yeah. Wow, powerful stuff. All right, thank you, Patrick.
You bet.
Veritas Counseling and the whole subject of hurt, it's a biggie.
Yep.
Bigger than I can put my arm around. But I do know that we all suffer one time or another. We're impacted by somebody's words. Are we able to forgive as we are forgiven?
Yeah.
Forgive me as I forgive others.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right. Not to the point of condoning,
No.
but for the point of finding a place to start in a peaceful way to move forward.
Right.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
You bet. My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.